welcome back to the Locks. I am the mysterious Namit. We are gathered to read to Talban glitches the horrors and the shadows that extend outside. If you want to keep these locks open and support the channel, leave a like and subscribe to Grimroll Locks. It helps us keep the lights on even when the darkness tries to snuff them out. Now, let us begin. Here is something biologically wrong about being awake 8-3 m. It is not the fatigue or the way your eyes burn from the artificial blue light of a monitor. It is a primal feeling, deep innate and from a time when our ancestors knew that the dark was not empty. When the sun goes down, the world chants. The rules of physics seem to bend. Silence becomes heavy, almost like a physical weight pressing against your eardrum. Most people sleep through the witching hour. They are safe in their beds. You know of lot walks the streets or stands in the empty corridors of office buildings while they dream. But for those of us who works the night shift, the security guards, the delivery drivers, the gas station attendants, we know the truth. We know that the night does not belong to us. We are just trespassers. And sometimes the things that live in the dark notice it. What follows are 5 accounts from people who worked the graveyard shift and found some story make them. Story on the glass box. I had worked the overnight shift at a gas station off Highway 80 in Nebraska for about 6 months. It is not a glamorous job, but it pays the bills, and usually it is quite. The station is one of those 24-hour stop for truckers in where it chivalist a bright as light of force and light in an ocean of carfuls, tides, and fog camp, empty plains. In the winter, the isolation is even worse. The snow swallows the sound. You can stand outside and scream, and the silence just lit up. It was a Tuesday in February. The temperature has dropped to 10 degrees below zero. The wind was howling, rattling the metal canopy over the palms, making the whole structure graying like a zombie beast. Inside, it was warm, smelling of stale coffee, floor cleaner, and that specific mix of gasoline and hot dogs that every gas station seems to have. I was the long shift. My clocker, Dave, had clocked out at 11 p.m., leaving me with a long stretch until 7 a.m. By 2 a.m., the traffic had died completely. I hadn't seen a car in over an hour. I was sitting behind the counter, scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the hum of the beverage coolers. It is a sound you don't notice during the day, but at night, it sounds like a swarm of angry bees. I decided to brew a fresh pot of coffee, mostly to have something to do with my hands. I walked over to the coffee station, which is right next to the large front windows. These windows tore the store into a fishbowl at night. Because it is so bright inside and pitch black outside, you can see out. You just see your own reflection staring back at you. But alone outside, I can see everything you are doing. I was pouring the water into the machine when something caught my eye. Not a movement, but a stillness. I cupped my hands over my eyes and pressed my face against the cold glass to cut the glare. Me heart did a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. Standing at the very edge of the poverty, right where the flattest speed into the absolute darkness of the cornfields was Aberson. They were far away, maybe 50 yards, but I could tell it was a man. He was just standing there. He wasn't walking toward the pumps. He wasn't checking a car engine. He didn't even have a caboose. He was just a dark silhouette against the snow, facing the station, facing me. I pulled back from the window, shaking my head. I told myself it was probably a trucker who had parked around the back and was stretching his legs. But that didn't make sense. It was 10 below zero. You don't stand still in that weather. You move or you die. I went back to the counter, trying to distract myself. I restocked the cigarettes. I wiped down the register. 10 minutes passed. I couldn't help it. I looked up. He was closer. He hadn't moved while I was looking. But now he was definitely 10 yards closer than before. He was standing under the tall sing the thick displays, the gas prices. The red LED light from the sign cast a weird, bloody glow on his shoulders. He was wearing a dark coat, maybe a parka, but the hood was up, casting his face intentional. His hands were buried deep in his pocket. A cold prickle of sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I realized that I hadn't seen him move. I hadn't seen him walk. 1 minute he was at the edge of the field, and the next he was under the sign. I grabbed the land phone behind the counter, just holding the receiver in my hand, feeling the weight of it. What will I call? The police. And say what? Hat a man is standing outside. That is not a crime. I decided to task him. I locked my eyes on his soha. I stared at him for 5 full minutes. He did not flinch. The wind was whipping the hem of his coat, blowing snow on his boots, but he stood as still as you. It was unnatural. Humans have a natural sway. We shift our way. He was perfectly rigid. 10. A customer walked in. The bell above the door chimed, making me jump up in the air. It was a state trooper. I have never been so happy to see a cop in my life. He walked up to the counter, stumping the snow off his boots. Cold night, he said, grabbing a bottle of water. I noted my throat tight. Officer, I said, my voice cracking. Terry is out there. I pointed toward the window. He has been standing there for 20 minutes. It is weirding me out. The trooper frowned and turned to look. He walked over to the window, shading his eyes. I had. Where? The trooper asked. Under the price in, I said. The trooper shook his head. Here is nobody else, son. I ran out from behind the counter and looked. The space under the sink was empty. The snow was miserable. He must have left, the trooper said, chuckling. Probably dropped her, passing pricing through. Don't let the night shift to get to your heart. Stay warm. He paid for his waiter and left. I watched his cruiser pull out onto the highway, the tail is fading into the distance. I was alone again. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe it was just a satyr or a trick of the line. I turned my back to the window to count the cash in the drawer. I needed to focus on work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 $10 bills. The rhythmic counting calmed me down. Hen, I heard it. Ding dong. The automatic door chimed. My head snapped up. The glass doors were sliding open. A blast of freezing air rushed into the store, carrying a few snowflakes. But there was no one there. The door stayed open for a long moment, as if waiting for someone to enter, and then slide shut. I stared at the empty entrance. The motion sensors on those doors are not sensitive. A bird can trigger them. The wine trigger them. You need mass. You need a body. I slowly came out from behind the counter, grabbing a heavy metal flashlight we kept for emergencies. Hello. I called out. My voice sounded small and pathetic in the fluorescent hum. No thing. I walked toward the door, my boots squeaking on the linoleum. I wanted to see if there were footprints in the snow right outside a mat. I got close to the glass. I looked down. There were footprints. Wet, snowy footprints. But they were now outside. They were inside. He started right at the threshold of the mat and led to the left, down the first aisle to candy aisle. I hadn't seen Ilan walk in. I was looking right at the door when it opened. It was empty, but the white prints were there, glistening under the lights, melting into dirty puddles. On one step, two steps, three steps. To stop halfway down the aisle, I looked up from the floor, chasing the path of the invisible walker. I looked down the candy aisle. At the very end of the aisle, standing in front of the back coolers, was the man in the parka. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was there. Inside. He was facing away from me, staring at the energy drinks. But the way he stood, his neck was bent in a sharp, impossible angle, like it was broken, so the hizzer was resting on his shoulder. And then, while moving his feet, while turning his body, his head began to rate. Slowly, riding, turning all the way around until he was looking at me. There was no face. Inside the hood, there was smooth, pale skin. No eye, no mouth, no nose. Just a blank slate of flesh. The lights in the store flickered and died. I was in total darkness. The only sound was the humming of the coolers, and then from the end of the aisle, the wet, squelching sound of heavy boots taking a step toward me. Story 2. Cubicle 412. Here is a specific kind of silence that exists only in Copper High, rises after midnight. It is not a natural silence. It is pressurized. The air conditioning hums constantly, a low-frequency vibration that you feel in your teeth more than you hear with your ears. I work security for a 40-story building in downtown Chicago. My job was simple: sit at the front desk in the lobby, watch the cameras, and do a patrol of the floors every 2 hours. It was 3 a.m. on a Thursday. The city outside was asleep, or as asleep as Chicago ever gets. The lobby was a cavern of marble and glass, cold and empty. I grabbed my mallet and the key ring, dreading the patrol. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes to walk the whole building, still wasn't cladded. The elevator ride is always the worst part. You're trapped in a metal box, watching the floor numbers tick up, listening to the cables grunt in the shaft. I started off the top and worked my way down. Floor 40 to floor 13 were uneventful. Just rows of empty desk family photos smiling into the dark, monitors in sleep mode blinking their little orange lights. Then I got to the 12th floor. The 12th floor was supposed to be empty. The previous tenants, a law firm, had moved out 3 months prior, and the floor was gutted for renovations. No furniture, no cubicles, just an expanse of torn up carpet and exposed concrete pillars. Electricity was mostly cut, leaving only the emergency exits and casting a sickly green glow over the dust. I swiped my badge at the service entrance. The heavy door clacked and swung open. The smell hit me first: trial vest and old copper wire. I began my walk, shining my flashlight beam across the empty space. The beam cut through the floating desk most. I was halfway across the floor, near the west windows, when I heard it. Click. Clack. Click. I froze. It was the distinct, sharp sound of a mechanical keyboard. The kind gamers are old typists use. I held my breath, straining my ears. Maybe it was the building settling. Maybe a pie banging. Click. Black. Space bar. Click. No. Tat was typing. Someone was typing. Fast. Security, I called out. My voice echoed off the concrete pillars, buzzing back at me. Is anyone there? The typing stopped immediately. I waited. Then seconds. 20 seconds. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. I started moving toward the sound. It had come from the southeast corner, an area that used to be executive office. As it got closer, I saw something that made my stomach drop. In the middle of the empty, gutted floor, there was a single cubicle. I didn't been there eyes today. I was sure of it. I had walked this floor 24 hours ago and was completely bare. But there it stood a gray, fabric wool cubicle, pressed down place like a glitch in a video game. And there was a light coming from inside it. I gripped my flashlight tighter, my palm sweating against the metal. I walked up to the opening of the cubicle. Hello, I says, stepping inside. The cubicle was fully furnished. There was a desk, an ergonomic chair, a stapler, and a cup full of pens. And sitting on the desk was a computer monitor, glowing bright blue. There was no computer tower, no power cords running to the wall. The monitor was Ty's, sitting there, powered by knowing, humming with static, but it wasn't showing a desktop or a screensaver. It was showing a camera feed. I leaned in closer, squinting at the grainy image. The camera angle was high, looking down from a corner. It showed a gray cubicle wall. It showed a desk. And it showed a man in a security uniform standing in the cubicle, looking at the monitor. It was me. I was looking at a live feed of myself right now. I instantly whipped my head around to look at the ceiling corner behind me, where the camera should be. There was nothing there. No camera. No wires. Just a bare concrete ceiling and a rusty sprinkler hat. I looked back at the screen. The me on the screen had crying hard too. But then, the me on the screen turned back to the monitor. I hadn't turned back yet. My reflection on the screen was moving independently of me. On the monitor, the security guard, my doppelganger, leaned in close to the screen, his face filling the frame. He smiled, but it wasn't a smile. It was a baring of teeth, too wide, too many teeth in his mouth. He raised a hand and waved. Then the monitor went black. I didn't wait to investigate. He ran. I sprinted across the uneven floor, tripping over bundles of wire, my flashlight beam swinging wildly. I burst through the stairwell door and ran down 12 flights of stairs, my heart hammering like a piston against my ribs. When I got to the lobby, I locked myself in the security office and watched the cameras for the rest of the night. I never went back to the 12th floor. The next day, I asked the building manager about the cubicle on the 12th floor. He looked at me like I was crazy. There is no furniture on 12th, he said. The contractors haven't even started framing yet. I quit 2 days later. But sometimes, when I am sitting at my computer home late at night, I get this feeling. A prickling on the back of my neck. Life there is a camera in the corner of the ceiling, and someone somewhere is watching me on a screen waiting for me to turn around. Story 3. The Dead End. The gig only is a trap. I learned that the hard way driving for a delivery app in the rural foothills of the Appalachian. The money is decent because nobody wants to drive out to the sticks at 2 a.m., but the isolation is the real cost. I picked up an order from a 24-hour diner. A heavy bag. Burgers, fries, milkshakes. The payout was $50 for a 10-mile drive. That is unheard of. I accepted immediately before anyone else can snake it. The destination wasn't an address. It was a set of GPS coordinates. That happens sometimes out here. New bills or trails don't always show up on the map. I plucked the coordinates in Polar, I phoned and headed out. The first 5 miles were fine. Highway driving. But then the GPS told me to turn left onto Animate Road. It was a gravel track that wound up into the dense forest. The trees here are Arctic oaks and pines that crowd the road, the raid, turbidges interlacing overhead to form a tunnel. It was raining, a light mist that made the world look gray and blurry in my headlights. I drove for 20 minutes. The gravel turned dark. The dirt turns and lot. My little sedan was struggling, sliding in the rot. I was about to turn around and cancel the order when I saw the landmark. My phone buzzed with a message from the customer. Stop at the dead end. Leave the food on the large stump. Do not j out of the car. Roll down your window and place it. I looked ahead. The road ended abruptly at a wall of dense briars and trees. And right there, illuminated by my high beams, was a massive tree stump, easily 4 feet wide. It was the middle of nowhere. No house, no light, no mailbox, just the woods. I pulled up next to the stump. I rolled down the passenger window. The smell of the woods hit me with earth, pine needles, and something else. Something sweet and rotting, like raw meat left in the sun. I reached over, grabbed the heavy paper bag, and set it on the flat surface of the stump. Order delivered, I muttered to myself, reaching for my phone to swipe the completion bar. That is when I noticed the note. It was pinned to the stump with a rusty hunting knife. A piece of lime-made book, paper fluttering in the wind. I squinted to read it. Note, loc ATA a fee 3 line. With an intick, black chorl. Women instinct is a split thing. If someone tells you not to look, you look. I lifted my eyes past the stump, past the high beams, into the wall of trees. At first, I saw nothing. Just trunks and shadow. But then, the shadow shifted. About 10 feet back in the brush, something was standing. It was tall. Too tall. It looked like a person stretched out on a rack. The limbs were thin and pale, almost blending in with the birch trees. It had no clothes on. It was standing partly still, its arms hanging down below its knees, and at a face. But the face wasn't on its head. The head was the smooth knob of bun. The face, 2 eyes, and a wide vertical mouth was on its chest. The eyes on its chest blinked. They were plaintive, like a cat's eyes, low and yellow in the purple light of my carol. I slammed the car into a river. My tires spun in the mud, flying slush everywhere. I heard a sound, and not a scream, but a mimicry. It sounded like my own voice. Order delivered. The thing in the woods whispered. It was lad, echoing inside my own head. I found Chasing and peeled out of there, distilling backwards down the dirt road until I could turn around. I drove 80 miles an hour all the way back to the highway. I reported the incident to the app support. I told them it was an unsafe drawback. They told me to account the police, the order having created the night with a prepped card and had already been dealt. I still drive for the app. I have to. I need to run money. But now, if I see a drop-off with coordinates instead of an address, I can sell it. I don't care how much it pays. I am not feeding with our lives in those woods in steepy these stories for and 5 story 4. The night nurse. Hospitals are different places now. During the day, the place of science and medicine, messing with daughters, rattling gurneys, and the noise of the living. But at night, when the visitors leave and the lights in the hallways dim to the lay and resetting, the hospital becomes a place of transition. It feels less like a building and more like a departure lounge for the soul. I have been a nurse for 12 years, mostly on the night shift at a county hospital in rural Ohio. You get used to the sounds. The rhythmic beeping of cardiac monitors, the hiss of oxygen tanks, the squeak of shoes on polished tile. But there is one sound I never got used to. The coal light in the West Wing. The West Wing was built in the 1950s and was mostly decommissioned 3 years ago. We use it for storage now. All beds, broken lower machines, stacks of file boxes. No patients go down there. The rooms are strapped bare. The electricity is on, but just barely. It was 3:30 in the morning. I was at the nurse's station in the active ward, charting vital. My only company was the hum of the computer and the occasional groan of a patient down the hall. Bing! The sound was soft, but in the sounds, it sounded like a gunshot. I looked up at the call board of the desk. A single light was flashing red. Room 304. My blood ran cold. Room 304 is in the west wing. It is at the very end of the long, dark corridor that connects the old building to the new one. There is no patient in room 304. Here isn't even a mattress on the bed frame. I try to ignore it. A glitch, I told myself. Old wiring crossing signal. I reset the bar from the desk. The light went up. 5 minutes paste. Bing! 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 The light was back, flashing insistently now. It wasn't just a sidle, it felt like a demand. I sighed, grabbed my master key card and a flashlight. I had to go physically reset the button, the room to make it stop. It was protocol. I walked to the double doors that separated the active ward from the west wing. As soon as I pushed through, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Air smelled different here stole, nasty, with a faint, lingering odor of rubbing awful and all sickness that never quite whitewashed. My footsteps echoed loudly. Clack, clack, clack. I counted the door numbers as I paced. 301, 302, 303. The door to the 304 was clasped. I put my hand on the handle. It was ice cold. I pushed the door open. The room was pitch black. I clicked on my flashlight and swept the beam across the space. It was exactly as I remembered. Ank's post-metal bed frame, a bedside table with a peeling laminate top, and a bare window reflecting my unnervous face. The call button card was hanging from the wall, dangling over the metal headboard. I walked over, my shoes crunching on something on the floor. I looked down. Dead fly. Hundreds of them dried and curled up, covering the floor like a carpet near the window. I shuddered and stepped over them. I reached for the button on the wall to hit switch. Click. The flashing light on the console died. Silence returned. Just a glitch, I whispered to myself, turning to leave. That is when I heard the sound. It came from under the bed. It wet, rattling intake of breath, like someone with light in their lungs trying to gasp for air. Apt. I froze. My hand was on the doorknob. My brain screamed at me to rung, to open the door and sprint back to the light. But my nerves instance, the ons drilled into me for a decade, avoid my fear. Someone shouted her. Is someone there? I asked, shining the light at the base of the bed. Nothing but the metal legs and the darkness underneath. I slowly crouched down. I had to look. If a homeless person had broken in and was dying under there, I couldn't just leave them. I lowered my head, bringing my eyes level with the mattress frame. I shined the light into the gap between the floor and the bed. It was empty. Just dust bunnies and the wall behind it. I let out a shaky laugh. God, you are losing it, Sarah, I muttered. I started to stand up. As I shifted my weight, a hand shot out from the darkness from under the bed, but from the mattress frame itself. It wasn't a human hand. It was too long, the fingers like spider legs, pale and gray. It wrapped around my ankle with a rope like of eyes. It was freezing cold, burning my skin through my scrub. I screamed. I yanked at my leg, back with every ounce of adrenaline I had. The grip held for a second, then the finger seemed to dissolve, melting into smoke or shatter. I fell backward onto the floor, scrambling away on my hands and heels, kicking wildly at the air. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't close the door. I didn't look back. I sprinted down the hallway, bursting through the double doors, back into the active ward. I sat at the nurse's station, hyperventilating, staring at the callboard. My ankle throbbed. I pulled up my pant leg. Here, printed clearly on my skin, were 5 distance brace finger marks, but they were wrapped twice around my ankle as if the fingers were 10 inches long. Then, the bar beat. Bing. Rune 304. I didn't go back. I called security. When they went down there, they found nothing. Room empty. Dust undisturbed. But they did find one thing. The coal button cord out of the wall. Threaded. As if something had chewed through the copper wiring. Story 5. The server farm. You think silence is scary. Try absolute, deafening noise. I work as a senior technician AE, Tier 4 data center in the Nevada desert. This place is a fortress. I am trick centers, armed guards, men traps at every entrance. We host servers for government agencies, major banks, Texans. The data here is worth more than gold. The server floor, quality to the whole, is massive. It is the size 3 football fields filled with rows and rows of black server cabinets. It is capped at a constant 65 degrees. And it is loud. The cooling fans from thousands of servers create a whine noise where the hits 100 decibels. You have to wear industrial ear defenders to walk in there. You can't hear yourself think. You can hear full steps. You can't hear someone screaming right behind you. I was pulling a double shift to replace a bank of faulty hard drives in Sector Go. It was 12:15 a.m. I was the only human being on the floor. The rest of the crew was in the break room in the admin building, a quarter mile away. I swiped my badge, paced the retina scan, and entered the hall. The roar hit me instantly, vibrating in my chest. I put on my ear defenders and walked down the long, cold aisle. I reached the faulty rack, unlocked the cage, and pulled my Thalma's diagnostic tablet. Reads a specialized app that connects to the facility's thermal cameras. It helps us spot overhiding units before they catch fire. I tapped the screen, bringing up the thermal feed for my ale. The screen showed the rows of servers in cold blues and greens, with the hard exhaust showing up as a ring. And right in the middle of the aisle, standing about 10 feet behind me, was a large, bright-brush, red predator. I froze. I turned around. The aisle was empty. Just the black mesh doors of the server racks stretching into the distance. I looked back at the table. The bread shape was still there. It was rawly human shape, but distorted. The head was big of less intense horrible 100 degrees Fahrenheit, glowing white hot in the center. I waved my hand in front of the sensor to make sure the table wasn't frozen. My own hand appeared on the screen, a fainter orange. The system was working. I turned around again, pulling one air cup off to listen. Hey! I shouted. Who is there? My voice wallowed instantly by the roar of the fans. I looked at the table. The head signature had moved. It was closer now. Butted and it walked. The shape was elongated now, stretching out. I looked at the floor where the heat source should be. Nothing. Then I noticed this thing on the table that made my bowl turn to ice. Hat's signature wasn't on the floor. The bottom of the shape did touch the ground. It was hovering. I tilted the table up. The thermal camera feed tilted with it. The heat signature was on the ceiling. I slowly, painfully tilted my head back to look up. A booth the server racks, running on the cable trays ankling ducks, was a creature. It was clinging to the sign lane like a gecko. It was translucent to the naked eye, simmering high heat on hot road. I could only see the distortion of the last row its body. But on the table it was a blazing inferno of red and white. It had four limbs splayed out on the metal ducts, and a head that was turned directly downward, directly at me. As I watched, a drop of something thick and clear dragged from its mouth. It landed on the floor next to my boo with a heavy splat. The drop sizzle. It was melting the floor tile. Nothing on the ceiling shifted. On the table, the bob bunched up, like a cat preparing to pounce. I didn't wait to see it jump. I dropped the hard drive I was holding. I didn't care. I bolted it. I ran down the aisle, slipping on the polished floor. I didn't look back, but I held the table up as I ran. The red dot was moving fast. It was skittering along the ceiling, matching my pace, gaining on me. I reached the exit door. I slammed my bash against the reader. Access denied. I panicked. I slammed it again. Access denied. Biothreat detected. The system had locked the doors. It dictated head anomaly and thought the server room was on fire. It was stilling the room to starve the fire of oxygen. I was trapped. I turned around, my back against the cold steel door. I held the table up with shaking hand. The red shape was right in front of me. It was hanging from the ceiling, directly above the door frame. It dropped. The hex signature fell to the floor, landing in a crouch. I looked over the top of the table. I saw nothing but the shimmering air, like a breather made a blast. I can feel the heat reading off it, singing my eyebrows. I squeezed my eyes shut and screamed, waiting for the burn. Then the Hallam gas system kicked in. Massive jets of ice expression days blasted feister from the floor and ceiling vents. The room turned into a white fog instantly. The gases disseminated the two sucked the heat of the air. I heard a shriek. I saw the cut through the roar of the fans, a high-pitched digicine scream that shattered the glass on the server racks. The heads on my face vanished. The door clicks. Safety override active. I fell backward out of the room into the airlock, and the heavy door slammed shut and sealed manipulatively. I lay on the floor of the airlock, gasping for breath. Through the safety glass of the door, I looked back into the server room. The gas was clearing. On the inside of the glass, pressed right up against the window, was a handprint. It was burned into the glass, melting it. It had 3 fingers and was smoking. I transferred to the day shift in admin the next week. I don't go into the hall anymore. But sometimes, when the system runs a thermal diagnostic, I see glitches in the reports. Ghost signal. Head spikes in the soiling ducts. They say it is just faulty sensors. But I know better. The hat is still there, waiting for the lights to go out. Calm collision. The price of the night. We trace our days for nights to keep the world turning. We keep the lights on, the gas pumping, and the data flowing while the rest of humanity slips. We tell ourselves it is just a shift. We tell ourselves the extra money is worth the isolation. But every person who has worked the graveyard shift knows the truth. We are not just working a different set of hours. We are stepping into a different version of reality. A version where the laws of physics are sections, not rules. Where shadows detect thumbs falls from walls, and where silence is loud enough to scream. The gas station attendant in Nebraska, the security guard in Chicago, the driver in the Appalachians, the nurse in Ohio, and the technician in Nevada. He'll learn that when you stare into the dark long enough, something inevitably stirs back. And sometimes it does this stare. It touches. It mimics. It huns. So, the next time you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., restrictly though sleep, take a moment to listen. Real listen. Is that the house settling? Or is it footsteps in the hallway? Is that your reflection in the window? Or is something wearing your face, waiting for you to look away? As this has been the mysterious Nomad. If you want to keep these lush open, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Remelet Lex. Let me know in the comments which story kept you up tonight. Stay safe.